What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. So tonight at 8 p.m., a massive Game 7. You've heard this plenty of times before. The Boston Bruins and the Toronto Maple Leafs are heading to 7 games after the Boston Bruins blew a 3-1 lead. This is going to be absolute cinema. So today I wanted to look at what happens to the loser of this game. What happens to either the Boston Bruins that blow a 3-1 lead or the Toronto Maple Leafs who won a round last year but seem to be back to their first round losing days. Because although I think the winner of this probably going to get spanked by Florida, but if you win this series, you might be able to keep your coach, keep your GM, keep your core intact. If you lose this game, if you lose tonight at 8 p.m., there's going to be pretty massive and sweeping changes. So I'm going to look at, from a Leafs perspective and a Boston Bruins perspective, what I think will happen based on which team loses, what in terms of players, core, all that stuff, because at this point, both of these cores, Toronto, just for the last 6 years, it simply has not been acceptable. And Boston, for the most part, since that 2019 Stanley Cup final, have not had the playoff success that you expect when you're such a consistently good, high-level regular season team. So without further ado, let's do the Leafs first. I am going to pick the Boston Bruins in this game. I know that's like against logic, considering the Leafs have been the better two teams. I think it's going to swing back and forth, and I think Boston is going to show up. So first, let's go through the Leafs, and also they're probably the team that's more likely to make some pretty big changes if they do lose in this first round. When looking at it, yeah, I don't think that them coming back and forcing a Game 7 changes anything of your opinion on this core going forward. If they do lose this Game 7, you can't be taking a moral victory in the fact that Matthews wasn't playing, Nylander wasn't playing, and you came back from 3-1. Miss me with that crap. I know that's definitely unfortunate, but when it is year 6 of the Tavares core and year, 8 with the other guys, no moral victories, none of that. So when looking at the Leafs, unless they make the Eastern Conference Finals, honestly, I think they're going to have to do something pretty serious. If they lose in the first round, 5 games or 6 games to Florida after this, that's also unacceptable. But when looking at it, I think the first thing that we can all agree with the Toronto Maple Leafs, if they lose in the first round, Sheldon Keefe's got to be gone. I thought he probably should have been arguably fired after last year. I got outcoached to holy hell against Paul Maurice. But if they lose in the first round, Sheldon Keefe, he's got to go. Yes, he did just sign a 2-year extension, I believe, at the start of this season. Toronto Maple Leafs, their ownership group, they have the money to fire him. It's perfectly fine. And when looking at it, while Sheldon Keefe, I believe, has like the highest regular season points percentage of all time, I don't care about that crap. He inherited a fantastic high-level playoff team. The playoff results have not been there. This is his 5th playoff run with this team. I know 2020 is tough because he inherited the team midseason and then the whole COVID situation. So it's his 4th full run with the team. And to have that, to only win 1 game in the second round, simply unacceptable. I think when looking at it, when replacing a Sheldon Keefe, I'm for more young and up-and-coming teams, maybe go with an inexperienced coach. I don't think that's the case with the Toronto Maple Leafs. If they're going to fire Sheldon Keefe, they cannot mess around. They cannot hire David Carl from Denver or something like that, really think outside the box. I think they actually do need to recycle a coach that has had success prior. A guy that I would definitely look at is a Craig Berube guy. Craig Berube guy, Craig Berube himself. When looking at it, he's a no-nonsense coach. I think he can whip some of these guys into shape. Not into shape, but mentally whip them into shape, because right now they just don't have what it takes. You fire Keefe, you bring in a more experienced, seasoned guy to hopefully take you to another level. Keefe, solid coach. He's going to get another job most likely, but the results are just without a doubt that he maybe just can't get this team over the hump if they do lose this Game 7. So next up, coach gone. I think Brad Treliving's safe. Obviously, he just got the job. Not going to happen. Brendan Shanahan, he's been there forever at this point. I thought if they got rid of Dubas, he would have been gone. I think he'll stay. I don't know. He'll be there forever at this point, even if they never make like an Eastern Conference Finals. I fully resided to that fact. Next up, I think Mitch Marner, you heavily try to trade him this offseason. When looking at it, yes, he does have that no movement clause, but I think you can talk to him and just sit him down and say, we're not going to re-sign you, so if you want an 8-year deal, which these players really want in order to get that extra year, especially for Mitch Marner, that this is going to be his last big contract of his entire career, you say, hey, we can trade you somewhere. They'll give you some mega deal right out of the rip before you even play a game for that team, or you're going to have to leave in free agency where you're going to get a 7-year deal and you might not get the amount of money that you want heading to a new situation or having to prove yourself this year on an expiring deal. So in looking at it, I think you try to trade Mitch Marner, try to get him to waive his no movement clause. And if you're going to trade him, I think the package is a legit top pairing defenseman, because right now the defense core is just unacceptable. I don't think that you need an elite forward in return, but you get a top pairing two-way defenseman who's arguably could be your number one because Morgan Riley isn't really number one. So 1A or 1B to a Morgan Riley, as well as a young forward. When looking at it, I did it. This isn't my hypotheticals. It's not going to happen, but I think a package that would be comparable to this, it's not going to happen again because this is the Ottawa Senators, but like a Jacob Chikrin level top pairing defenseman and like a Shane Pinto, 22-year-old, 23-year-old promising forward. I think that's a solid package for Mitch Marner. Spread your money out far more efficiently than Mitch Marner's $10.9 million cap hit. And if you are going to re-sign him, that's probably going to be 11.5. So I think you trade Mitch Marner and you just get a deeper team. And with that defense core, it's simply unacceptable. Now, in looking at the Leafs from a salary cap situation, I'm assuming in that trade, they trade for about Mitch Marner's salary in that. So they'll have $18 million. I think you do bring back a Max Domi. I really like Max Domi. I think he's really brought some sandpaper as well as some skill. Tyler Bertuzzi, I wouldn't hate bringing him back, but probably not, especially if he wants like 5.5 yet again. TJ Brody gone. Liljegren, re-sign him. He's an RFA. Edmondson gone. Giordano gone. So you're going to have probably, after the Domi re-signing, maybe you have some money from Marner left over. You're going to have $10, $12 million. I think you just spread that out to middle six forwards as well as some bottom pairing defensemen, really boost that instead of, again, what they were rolling out this year. It was just simply unacceptable. So you just balance this team out more with a new coach. You still have Matthews. You still have Nylander to be your superstars. Nyes has showed some flashes. I think next year he can be a 60, 65-point guy playing in that top six. Although it might be a little bit of a retool to a degree, I think they would be a highly competitive team next year. And going forward, just have far more cap flexibility in order to be a far deeper team. When looking at it, next year would kind of be a transitional year because it's Tavares' last year at making $11 million. That's going to go all the way down to like 6 to 7. I think he's going to take a very team-friendly deal on his next contract. So next year, with a new coach, I don't think expectations would be extremely high, but you would be heading in the right direction in terms of overall solid salary cap space. And Easton Cowan hopefully might be ready by next year to contribute at a decent level at the NHL level. So that's my Leafs if they lose. What they'll have to do. There's definitely going to be some changes. Marner, Keefe, potentially gone. Would be very interesting. Next up, for the Boston Bruins, Jim Montgomery, I could go either way. I could be swayed either way because when looking at it, smashed expectations. I think he's a very good coach. But when you're looking at it, blowing a 3-1 lead, and especially how uninspiring offensively they've looked in these last two games, I'm very indifferent. If you want to fire him, sure. If you don't, I 1000% understand. Maybe you blame the players a little bit more. I think Sweeney will be back. When looking at it last year, I think he did very good at the deadline. The team just kind of crapped its pants. As well as this year, it was kind of a retooling year because they had $5-6 million of bonus overages that they couldn't straight up spend. Sweeney's done a good job. I am pro Sweeney. I think he's definitely going to stay. He's going to get one more offseason, considering this year was viewed as a retool. If they lose in the first round next year, I think he's probably gone. So I would definitely keep Sweeney, and Montgomery's up in the air. The one guy that I think you do need to trade is Linus Ullmark. When looking at Linus Ullmark, he has 1 year left at $5 million. I always said, I've said it from the start, once Wayman started playing at a high level, the rotation, the tandem is good for the regular season. It's fantastic. But when it comes playoff time and you're benching a $5 million goaltender when you could have a $5 million 50 to 60 point second liner, that's massive. That's massive. It results in fantastic regular season success. They have a goalie that can give you .915 save percentage consistently every single night. That is crazy. But I think going forward, I think Swayman proved this year, well, he didn't play this insane workload of like 50 plus games. I think you can trust him to play 55-ish games. So you dump Ullmark. You get a solid, at this point, I would go more so offensive with that trade in terms of getting a legit second liner to add to this core, considering they have not been scoring at the rate that we expected. So you trade Linus Ullmark, you get more depth offensively, and you just call it a day. You definitely need to bring in a solid backup for Jeremy Swayman because he's very young. But after trading away Ullmark, you're going to have, I believe, $25 million of cap space. It's tough with Jake DeBrusk because he's playing fantastic in these playoffs, or at least on the power play. I would probably bring back Jake DeBrusk if it's going to be between $5-ish million. JVR's probably gone. If he wants to sign another sub $1.5 million contract, be my guest. Maroon, maybe he stays. Danton Heinen might stay potentially. In terms of that defense core, I think you let Grzelcyk and Forbort go. And then you probably maybe re-sign Kevin Shattenkirk, but with that 2020 $25-ish million. Let's call it 18, 17 after you re-sign a DeBrusque and some other guys. I think you attack in terms of that forward core. And when you look at it, potentially getting a number one center. I like Coyle. I like Pavel Zacha, but they're not really number one centers. I think a guy that they could potentially go after, Steven Stamkos. I think Stamkos is going to stay in Tampa Bay, but when looking at it as a guy that can come in and actually provide some goal scoring that they desperately need, Steven Stamkos makes a lot of sense. Steven Stamkos, maybe he finally wants to get out of Tampa Bay, go to a different situation. It's tough because they've battled so much, but I think Boston definitely needs to be in the market for a legit center, whether that's Stamkos, whether that's Duchesne, who's coming off a $3.5 million contract. Will Dallas be able to keep him? Elias Lindholm. I'm a little bit lower on that one just because he didn't look that good this year. But I think Boston needs to make a big splash in terms of the forward core, in terms of a number one center. And even in defense, I think they should be after a guy like a Chris Tanev, a Gritty. That guy would work fantastic in Boston because right now, even their defense core did not really play up to snuff, especially with Grzelcyk's fall off. So you get a second pairing defenseman. You get hopefully a number one center with that around $15 to $16 million. And then you run back this team. I don't think it would be this series sucks for Boston because it's against Toronto. You're up 3-1, but this year was never supposed to be like an all-in, like go cup or bust kind of run like last year. I think the Boston Bruins still have a very good future. But yeah, that's my thoughts on what happens if these two teams lose. You're definitely going to see some changes. You're definitely going to see some firings. But let me know in the comments, what do you think about this? What do you think is going to happen if the Leafs lose? What do you think is going to happen if the Bruins lose? And I'll be seeing the next one.